The older I get, the more time I spend thinking of the past, experiences that I've had, things I have seen, musing on the thoughts that all we really have is our memories. Nostalgia can come in various forms, warming recollections of childhood and simpler times, or sad reflections on opportunities missed. It can be triggered by a sound or a piece of music, a painting or a photograph, or any other external stimulus. It can wash over you out of nowhere when you least expect it. This video was supposed to be about something else, but much like my last video, once again, a game was released that grabbed me and demanded I take notice. Out of nowhere, I found myself gripped by nostalgia for a games console that never existed, from a childhood I never experienced, from memories I never had. Derek Yu is an American game developer from Pasadena, California. He is the mind behind what I think is one of the best games of all time, Spelunky. Not that it is my favourite game as such, even though I do play a few runs every other day or so, more that I genuinely think that it is a triumph of game design. Tight, engaging gameplay, flawless presentation and infinite replayability, rivaled only by games like Binding of Isaac for the simplicity of its mechanics. Sure, you can write a cool story for your RPG or adventure game, but making a game that I can play forever, that is engaging even though I have never actually finished it, is truly an achievement. I have watched interviews with Derek where he talks about the fact that people refer to Spelunky as a perfect game. And I would have to agree, it is like the concentrated essence of what makes a video game.
Mom! Dad!
Concentrated video game.
Don't touch it!
So what do you do once you have made the perfect game? You spend 7 years making 50 of them, and then shoving them into one bundle of pure nostalgia for the 8-bit era. And so UFO 50 was born. Now, is every game in this fascinating presentation perfect? Probably not, but each and every one across the variety of genres and themes have the same honed design and gameplay philosophy that makes Spelunky so special. To be more accurate, these games aren't just the product of Derek alone. He is merely the most notable member of a team of 5 that collaborated to bring them to life. As a child of the era this game, or games, is aiming at, I think that what makes it feel so familiar and true to its mission brief is the boundaries put in place. Having to work within them created a dedication to authenticity. The perfect period appropriate soundtracks, the 32 colour palette, and the 8-bit resolution of those bygone days. In terms of gameplay, the decision to limit the control scheme to directional input and just 2 buttons further embeds the right feel. Every game you dust off feels like it could have legitimately come from the 80s. But whilst there has been such painstaking dedication to the theme, where UFO 50 deviates is that one thing that wasn't constrained is the design philosophy applied to the games themselves. As you play each game, you can recognise some newer gameplay mechanics, making the game feel fresh yet retro at the same time. Quite often, games have 2 different mechanics in the same game. The first game I played was a scrolling beat 'em up, but upon getting captured, it turned into a rescue game that operated like Rogue. I think you could make a case for the entire thing being one big puzzle game, as there aren't really any instructions, and so for many of the games you are left to figure them out, which creates a brilliant feeling of discovery. And while it is probably overplayed at this point to mention it, it really is like you found a bag full of cartridges with no instructions and you are just sticking them in, turning it on and finding out what the hell the next game is. The theme of UFO 50 is that you've found an old console in a garage and a bag of games, and if you tackle each game in order from the beginning, they are supposed to move through the decade of the 80s, and the games get more advanced as they go along. For some mad reason, I decided to go to the end and play them all through backwards. Now, this was before I learned of the chronological order of the games, but still. Each game I loaded, I found myself trying to find the inspiration that it had come from, and then the secondary game mechanic that had been blended in to set it apart. There is such a diverse range of games that there will definitely be something for everyone, and discovery is a massive part of the joy of UFO 50. It was interesting to me to go through each game, giving it a couple of minutes before I moved on to the next, and every now and then I would play a game just that little bit longer. I would make a mental note to go back to one of those before I moved on to the next. There was also games where I could see the potential to spend more time in, but it didn't immediately grab me, like a whole ass Metroidvania with extra anti-gravity mechanics or a western themed JRPG. I'd like to spend a moment talking about some of my instant favourites. As I said, I sort of played through them in reverse order, and the first game that made me stop and play for a decent amount of time was Quibble Race. The moment this comes up, it feels like it has a sense of humour, as do the rest of the games really, but you are essentially betting on quibbles as they race. Quibbles are amusing little creatures, and each race features 3 quibbles, and as they run across the track they will fall over or trip on debris in front of them. Between each race you choose how much money to bet on what quibble, and you can use extra money to hinder quibbles in the next race by paying to have them beaten up, poisoned, drugged, or guarded against all of the previous actions. You could pay to get info on the form of individual quibbles and visit the loan shark if you are short of a bit of cash. All in the quest for you to be the one with the most money at the end of the race season. As a long-term fan of Football Manager, I quite like games where I make choices and then watch it play out. It is you against 2 CPU players, but there is a hot seat version, so I could see playing this game with friends would be quite hilarious, screaming at your stupid quibble as it keeps eating dirt. I can't vouch for the treatment of the quibbles and their well-being, but I can say that I will be playing this one a lot. Pilot Quest. What do you get if you cross a clicker game with an RPG? You get Pilot Quest. It is literally the classic clicker progression path. Bash the diamond with your yo-yo to get moon crystals. You can then turn moon crystals into moon ingots, which you can then spend to increase the output of moon crystals by growing them, and moon ingots by building houses so aliens move in, which you can then build workbenches for them to work at to produce more moon ingots, and so on and so forth. All your resource generation carries on whilst you are logged out of the game as well, so it is truly an idle game, in some ways. But then you can buy meat off another alien, I know how this sounds, which allows you to access a part of the map where you adventure about killing enemies and gathering resources for as long as the meat allows. Don't bother questioning it, just go with the flow. Each piece of meat gives you a certain amount of time, and you need to get in and out before the timer finishes. When you aren't adventuring, you can spend resources to boost things like the damage output of your yo-yo and stuff, so there are upgrades available. Your main mission is to get the resources to fix your crashed ship and then fly away. I found myself playing this one for quite a while and going off and cooking dinner, coming back every now and then and spending the resources that had built up and then going off again. Strangely compelling. Lords of Disconia. Lords of Disconia is like a medieval fantasy air hockey type thing. You ping discs around in battle, and each disc represents a type of troop in your militia. They are different sizes with different damages and hit points, and you can hit other items to get more gold, to hire more troops, or hit holy wells in order to heal lost points. The further you get into it, the more different types of troops with different bonuses and different skills are introduced. So I can see that tactics will become more and more of a thing, so I'm interested to see how deep does this go. Fist Hell. As far as I can tell so far, just a good old classic scrolling beat 'em up a la Streets of Rage / Double Dragon. It plays well and has zombies, not much to say about it so far, but it grabbed me enough to get on this shortlist, and I did play it for quite a while. Pin Golf. This is another game that I was hooked on immediately. I don't know how much there is to this, but you choose the angle of your shot, you hold the power and then let her rip. side view cyber golf with a few challenges. The hook is that you just want to try it again because you believe you can get that better score or one less stroke. I definitely want to get first place on this one. Just good, simple fun. Party House. A deck builder where you have to improve two stats: popularity and money. Some guests who come to your party bring money, others make your party more popular. You then have guests who have different skills. One guest will allow you to see who the next guest is. For example, you have a limit to how many guests you can have and you don't know who the next guest is. So if you were to draw the next guest and it was the one that has the ability to bring an extra guest with them, you would exceed the max number of guests allowed, and if you do that, you are penalised. But if you use the guest with the ability to see who your next guest is, you could choose to end the party early and then avoid the charge. Some guests give multiplier boosts and some will cause trouble and get the police called. But don't worry, there are hippie guests who chill everyone out and negate the police. If only that worked in real life. A very chill, fun deck builder indeed. The Big Bell Race. I mean, what if racing, but with Flappy Birdish controls? Use the direction to go left or right, hold the button to go up, release to go down. Simple in its construction, devilishly tricky in its execution. This is one I can see people like mastering and becoming really good at as you just whiz around and around. Camouflage. I love this little puzzle game. You are a newt and you must avoid being eaten. That's the main premise. The screen is set into different coloured areas and pressing a button on that colour will, as the title suggests, camouflage you. If you are camouflaged, you can sneak past the predator's vision and collect food and other newts to then take down the hole where you escape. And that's how you complete the level. It requires figuring out which order to move about the map and camouflage in turn to get to the end, but I was severely charmed by this game, and I am not a hardcore puzzle gamer. I've already played a fair amount of this and I have almost completed the map. Whether there is more maps or more to it than just that, I don't know, but I will definitely find out. And Demolition. And the last one of my instant favourites was another puzzle game. Demolition sees you having to kill enough monsters so that there are more villagers left at the end of the round than there are monsters. You have a number of different creatures that will explode in different patterns and you have to place them around the board and set up a sort of chain reaction so as to detonate all of them and take out the monsters. Sometimes you might need to deliberately blow up a villager and make a sacrifice to get that victory. Very satisfying. The puzzle, I mean, not blowing up innocent villagers. Anyway, those are some of my favourites so far, but make no mistake, every game in this collection has clear potential. Once I've gone through these, I'll move on to those. It's only out on PC at the moment, but I can guarantee you, like many other games like Spelunky and Binding of Isaac, etc., as soon as this gets released on the Switch, I will be buying it there as well, as this is a perfect set of games to have on the go. There is a clear theme that runs through all the games, with many characters showing up again and again, and also as you go through you will see that some games have sequels to the originals. I just find the idea so creative in its entirety. All aspects feed back into itself and just make it more creative. What I mean by that is something that to some level I want to explore in my next video, and that is that when limits are imposed, people often get even more creative. I genuinely think, as I mentioned earlier, that the period appropriate limitations of an 80s console, less colours, less buttons, etc., have added to the creative experience and forced the team to pull out something extra and not just rely on more modern functions. But while I could wax lyrical about the execution of all these factors, I think above all else, especially for someone of my age, is the feeling of nostalgia that it leaves upon you. And a certain type of nostalgia. So often, nostalgia comes with a sadness. Not always, but I think a lot of the time it does. It certainly does for me. Sometimes sitting at my desk late at night, just quietly thinking about my life and all those events that went before, times that I will never experience again, teenage years where I was truly free, long summer nights drinking and smoking and not feeling weighed down with the inescapable march of time. I think the sadness comes from the fact that they are your memories, personal to you, and as I said at the beginning, I think if we really think about it, if we're really honest with ourselves, our memories are all that we have. Then that makes me think about people with dementia or Alzheimer's, like my late nan, robbed of those precious memories. And maybe that is why they sometimes seem so sad. Anyway, I meandered a little off the path there, but ultimately what I want to say is that to me personally, I think that Derek and friends have done something quite special. By creating such a nostalgic experience, but one that never actually happened, people can experience nostalgia divorced of the actual personal memories and leave any sadness behind and experience what I will call new nostalgia. Nostalgia that you haven't yet become nostalgic for. Familiar yet unknown. A pure celebration of the essence of a decade.